All right, great. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm really excited to be here with you all today. Devin, is my sound good? Yep. Okay, great. Awesome. So thank you all for sharing in the chat. If you'd like to, you're more than welcome to share what your role is, your location, and what the weather situation is where you are. We were talking about the pollen here in central North Carolina, which is where I'm located. But my name is Dana Durbin. I am the teaching and learning librarian at UNC Chapel Hill Library. And I focus primarily on first year students. So I'll talk more about my context, but that's a little bit about my position. And then I do want to just talk about a couple of little housekeeping things. Please ask questions throughout. I'll be pausing at certain points for Q&A, but don't feel like you have to wait for those or for the end of the presentation to ask questions. I definitely welcome those. You can drop those in the chat as questions pop up for you. We're also going to use Mentimeter a few times during the session to get some audience feedback. Low stakes questions, they're anonymous, of course, and just a way for us to share our experiences with AI and libraries. And then one more thing before we get started, I like to model transparency in using AI tools. So I did use Claude, which is a large language model offered by Anthropic, to brainstorm and polish the outline of this webinar. So I'm happy to talk more about that too. But I do like to model that transparency that we recommend to our students. So a little bit about me and my context. I am at a large public R1 university. We have over 30,000 students. It's a big campus, lots of stuff happening on our campus. I mentioned I'm an instruction librarian. My focus is first year students and transfer students. And then for those of you all who work with undergrads or even high school students, you probably have talked with them. You know that they have lots of really a range of experiences, opinions, anxieties about AI. So that's a little bit about my context and who I work with the most. And then another important piece of my context is AI is really becoming more and more of an institutional priority on my campus. Both library leadership and campus leadership have put AI literacy kind of at the forefront of our focus. So that means that we have had support and resources to grow our AI efforts. And the flip side of that coin is that we also have to balance as we launch new AI services with our existing core services. So it's kind of both sides of that coin there. I think are important. So I share all of that about my context just because what I'm going to share will be shaped by your own context and what makes sense at your library or campus, in among your faculty, students, and staff. My goal is that our conversation will be as broadly useful as possible, but I do want to acknowledge that institutional context is different. We all have different resources, and that's going to impact what AI services might look like on your campus or at your library. So what worked for us at Carolina might not translate for your context, but hopefully our experience can be a good jumping off point for your own sustainable programming. So let's jump right into it. So before I talk, I want to hear from you all. I have set up a word cloud for us to kind of get some emotions out there about AI and responding to the need or questions about AI. So in this word cloud, I'd love for you all to share when a user asks about AI at the desk, in a workshop, instruction session, or consult, what are some words or feelings that come to mind? So you can scan the QR code. I'm also going to pull up the Mentimeter screen in just a second, and that will have the link and code if you prefer to reply on your computer. Give me just one second, but it will be a word cloud, so short words will work best. So I see some responses coming in, which is great. Yeah, check the syllabus. I know that's one that the first place that I direct students for sure. And so because it is a word cloud, if multiple people respond with the same thought or idea or feeling, the word will be larger. Okay, I'm going to leave it open a few more seconds. Okay. So you're welcome to keep dropping those in. I see the word cloud continuing to change. But just some of the larger words that jump out to me are cautious. And I definitely feel that of not wanting to advise someone to do something that's gonna, potentially break the honor code and get them into trouble with their professor, which ties into that confusion, potentially frustration, about, lots of aspects of this new technology. It can save time, so several people mentioned that. Curiosity is a great one. I am very curious, about how we just, I feel this with myself, the tendency to personify generative AI tools and call, like, I asked Claude and Claude said, and so I have a lot of curiosity about how that's going to change how we interact with these tools and find information. But lots of really good, so hesitant, ugh, hesitation, yeah, happy to help, a sounding board. People are not asking, which is interesting. Yeah, so definitely different in different contexts at different campuses. Surveillance, yeah, nice. Go to what your professor says. Yeah, overwhelmed. Ashamed is interesting. We talk a lot in our library group that provides these AI workshops about stigma in AI, both for us as library workers, for students. That has been a kind of a conversation of interest on our campuses. Students are a little bit hesitant, I think, to even ask about AI tools because there's a stigma attached to using them. And so we want to kind of open that conversation up a little bit more. Awesome, great. Thank you all so much for sharing those. I'm going to jump back to the slideshow. And I do think it's important to acknowledge, at least for me, the rise of generative AI specifically, it feels different and more impactful than other kinds of educational technology that I've seen over the course of my career. I was a school librarian and then have been in academic libraries for 10 years. And it just feels different. This feels like weightier and more impactful for me personally so far in my career. All right, so again, thanks for sharing in that word cloud. As a jumping off point, I'm going to talk about campus-wide reactions to AI, and anxiety for me keeps coming up with lots of different user groups that have had questions about AI. So honestly, sometimes I just don't want to talk about it, especially in an instruction session. I just kind of wish there are some days it's like, I wish I could just forget that that technology even existed. But it does, and so we want to address it. It can be a fraught topic. There can be lots of strong opinions and emotions that can come up or bubble up from this discussion. And sometimes in an instruction session, I feel like I'm opening Pandora's box, or we're like going down a rabbit hole that is really taking us away from the main goal of why we're in the classroom together, which is research skills and information literacy. But AI tools are tied into all of that conversation as well, so I don't want to just ignore it. So it's a lot. And then across campus, here are some of the things that I've heard and my colleagues have heard related to AI. So course instructors are really kind of dealing with some significant anxiety around AI that we have observed. They're worried about academic integrity, the core goals of teaching and learning. I think worst case scenario, people are imagining like if an instructor builds assignments using AI and the students submit writing created with AI, is the university becoming just robots talking to each other? At what point are we missing the core goals of teaching and learning? A lot of instructors also feel some pressure to change their assignments and assessments in response to AI tools. We're seeing a lot more instructors have students do free writing, like handwritten assignments or exit tickets versus more technology-based writing, so that they can verify that that student is the one who wrote it. When they bring students to me in the library, sometimes instructors kind of want to pick my brain, which is great about AI, but I feel like sometimes not always equipped to answer their questions, honestly. And so that, again, it can kind of feel like a lot of extra added stuff that their instructors are hoping I have an answer that I don't necessarily have because it's a muddy issue. Students have their own concerns, which are equally serious, and a lot of times they feel really personal. They're worried about their futures, whether the careers that they're in college preparing for will even exist when they graduate. These really kind of existential questions about their future. Students have also shared that they get mixed messages from different professors, even from their peers. I mentioned that stigma sometimes is a factor. And so sometimes they'll look to the library, like to give me permission, or is it okay to use AI, or kind of a straightforward answer that maybe they feel like they're not getting somewhere else. As information professionals, I feel like we carry a particular concern that's not always part of the conversation, which is that AI has significant implications for misinformation and disinformation. AI tools can produce really plausible sounding text that is incorrect, very realistic images and video clips and audio that are actually deep fakes and are not real. These tools do have the potential to misinform, and one particular area of concern for me is elections and how that could have an impact on democracy and how people get their information to decide which candidates to vote for. So again, sort of seems like extreme examples maybe, but those are things that I think about a lot. And for us as library staff, our work centers on helping users find, evaluate, and use credible information. And so I think this is all tied in with the goal of our profession. So across all of those user groups, there are ethical dimensions and concerns. A lot of people, both inside and outside academia, are really, I think, grappling with whether they want to participate in AI at all or use AI at all. There are environmental concerns about the amount of water and power that data centers use, concerns about the impact on communities when data centers get built, concerns about bias, labor concerns, questions about whether copyright was violated in the training data. The AI companies scraped all of that training data and did not get consent or permission from the content creators. And so that initial copyright violation is a big concern for lots of users. And then, kind of bigger societal questions about, are these tools going to impact human creativity, critical thinking skills, our democracy as a whole? It really gets very existential and big. And kind of underlying all of that is campus guidance. And so at our campus, we are very careful to call it guidance rather than policy. I don't know if anybody else has had that specific experience, but policy is really slow to develop. And for the most part, that's actually a good thing, so that we can come to consensus. Shared governance can be, in place, and we come to an agreement for policy that will work for different stakeholder groups. So that's not quick. That's a really slow process. But in the meantime, students are really eager for practical guidance. And that can be kind of unclear. It can be varied from one instructor to another, one department to another. And so I think some folks on campus feel like they have to make judgment calls as individuals, that they wish that there were more concrete policy around. So all of that is sort of what we're swimming in right now. Lots of stuff going on. I do want to get a little bit more specific about my experiences as an instruction librarian, because I think instruction librarians face kind of particular challenges that are definitely distinct from course instructors and even from library staff maybe who don't provide instruction. So when I'm scheduling an instruction session, right, I'm coming in as a guest in that person's classroom. I'm not the course instructor. And so I want to be really cognizant of that at all times. And right now, AI policies, at least on my campus, are set by the individual course instructor. So they can vary really widely, even within the same department. I mostly work with a first-year writing program, which is a big group. On my campus, it's around a group of 70 different instructors. Those are some PhD students, some teaching faculty, some full-time faculty. So it's a real mixture of just all kinds of different folks with different approaches to AI. But that means that every time I schedule a session, I need to plan ahead to have that conversation with that instructor. And maybe I've worked with them for 9 years, but now we have to kind of adjust a little bit and make sure that we address this whole new area of technology. Some instructors that I've worked with have banned AI technology in their classroom, which is certainly their choice. I think that's a really difficult policy to enforce or monitor. But they have specifically told me, do not mention AI in the library session at all. So I take that slide out of my materials and we don't talk about it. again, I'm a guest lecturer. That is not my course, and that's not my call to make, but it does just add like an extra layer of conversation that needs to happen. Some classes are also, though, requiring it for assignments. So I'm thinking of one particular consult that I had with an undergrad student last fall, and she booked a consultation about the first year writing research project she had to do. And she was not allowed to use AI in that class. And we did kind of the traditional finding your sources, talking through all of that search. And then she was like, can I also ask you about one of my public policy courses? It's like, sure, I'm not the subject librarian for that, but I'm happy to get you started. And the assignment actually required her to use ChatGPT explicitly to write a policy brief and then critique it. So we worked through it, and she had to find some sources related to that policy brief, but it was just really interesting. She was asking for help in two different classes. And we looked at the syllabi, and they had two very different AI policies. So it's a lot to navigate. It can be a little bit tricky. The other piece, and I'm sure that you all have discovered this and kind of wrestled with it, is that there are lots of built-in AI features now in databases, search engines, platforms, research tools, things like research assistants, summarization tools, the overviews that are AI generated at the top of a Google search. And they're there really whether you want them or not. There's not a good way to opt out of them. And so sometimes I wrestle with that in the moment. Do I show the features and model them? Do I acknowledge that they're there, but then just move on? Do I explain why I'm not using them? It again just adds some extra work to each instruction session. I don't know of any kind of consensus there in the field among library instructors. I certainly don't have an answer, but I just kind of in the moment land on different responses depending on what the instructor has as an AI policy, what the students are interested in learning about, and just in the moment, I make that judgment call. Similarly, another area where consensus is kind of murky is how to cite or attribute AI use. The major style guides like MLA and APA have released guidance and advice, and that's really helpful. But I feel like it's still kind of evolving. Many of those guidelines are blog posts or posts on the website, and they haven't quite made their way through the process to become part of the official style guide yet. So when students ask me how to cite AI, I feel like I'm not really on solid ground in the same way that I would be if I were advising how to cite a journal article or a podcast, for example. Those have very concrete, agreed upon guidelines, and I feel like it's a little muddier when or if you should cite an AI tool and how it should be cited as a co-author. It depends on there's so much. It depends on so much, which I think is not the answer students want to hear, right? It's like, it depends. They really are turning to the library as like, I just need a straightforward answer. So something else that I really want to acknowledge is that we are all really busy already, and learning about AI literacy and AI tools takes a lot of time. Keeping up with the technology feels impossible to me. The tools change really rapidly. And it feels like that would be a whole second job for me to try to keep up with the policy changes around AI, the new tools that are coming out, the existing tools that are changing. Like I spent a lot of time in the fall learning about Sora, which is OpenAI's video. They created an app that was just a video app that you could look at only AI generated video, so short video clips, similar to TikTok, but everything on there was AI generated video. And I just read yesterday that they have sunsetted that app and they're not supporting it anymore and they're going to close it down. So things are changing really quickly. It's hard to keep up. That's also all layered on top of an already full workload for most of us or all of us. I don't think that's sustainable long term, and I think it's worth having conversations about and being honest about. If we do add things like AI workshops or AI support to our existing services, we will need to figure out what to say no to and what to sunset or stop supporting to make room for that. And I know that's really nuanced. It's not an easy conversation to have, but I do think it's worthwhile being honest because it's not sustainable for everyone to take on this kind of weight of learning about AI. across the libraries. And then the last piece that I have been affectionately calling the AI emotion dump. I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, but as I've become more of one of the AI people in my library, I have experienced this at times. I feel like we occupy this particular role in relation to students and also sometimes the faculty where we're approachable, we're friendly, we don't assign grades, we listen, and we're there to provide support, which is all great. But sometimes that turns into after a consultation or after instruction session, somebody is like, oh, I'm going to process all of my feelings and emotions and thoughts about AI at you because this is a convenient time to do that. And I've learned a lot in those types of conversations about how students and instructors are feeling about this moment. But it also does take emotional labor. It takes some soft skills. If it's in the middle of a session, kind of like gently redirect back to what our goal in the moment is, and get things back on track. So it's a lot. And I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that as well. So I would love to hear from you all again on the Mentimeter. How has AI changed your work in libraries? And if it helps, I know, thinking all the way back to 2023 and the launch of ChatGPT is a lot. So if you want to think of the last 12 to 18 months or last couple years to kind of set a time limit on that, that would be great. Yeah, and Steve, that's a really good point that we get that emotional dump sometimes too from our colleagues, yeah, who have lots of strong feelings too. All right, I'm going to open the Mentimeter and be quiet and give you all a second to respond. And I didn't really make clear, but this could be your own work that you do as a library worker. It could be how you relate to students and other people in your institution. You can interpret that pretty broadly. Mhm. I'm gonna leave it open for a few more seconds. So yeah, so many webinars, I know. Thank you for choosing to spend your valuable time with this one today. Yeah, more technology to keep up with, kind of changed outreach, productivity, creativity. It's had an impact. Yeah, morally gray, right? So that was what I was kind of wanting to point out that these tools feel different than other types of technology. I mean, I hear the analogy often that like it's, oh, like when we got laptops or when we got the internet, or Wikipedia, and there feels like something substantial that's a little different about this technology. But on the positive side, it can, somebody noted, simplify busy work, help you do data analysis, yeah, help you revise emails, skill set boost. Awesome. Yeah, Copilot is allowed at work, trying to use it more and evaluate it too. Been avoiding using it. Yeah, which is a very valid, right? How do you budget for these new tools if you for your own, purchasing them yourself or as your institution, the enterprise version of these tools are really expensive. And we have gotten quotes from some different groups and we're like, that's not feasible. So it is, it can add a significant amount to the budget. I know a lot of databases and research tools to add the AI features like the research assistant, there's an additional subscription cost. So, yeah, so that's all tied into our work as library staff. Awesome. Thank you all again for sharing your experiences with AI so far. I am next going to talk about what we did at Carolina, what we tried as a case study. And to be super clear, we did not start with a fully funded like AI literacy program. We now have a space in our main library called the AI Studio. We have an additional library staff member to support AI. We didn't start with any of that. We started really small with a few workshops. And so what we initially had was a group of staff that we came to call the Coalition of the Willing, who were already involved in AI literacy for different reasons. I was through the first year writing program. We have a health sciences librarian whose faculty had been asking her to incorporate AI in library instruction. A technology librarian, our data services librarians have been very involved in it. So we were all kind of dabbling in it. This was like 2024 early times. We were also seeing across campus a lot of support for faculty, which is great. Our Center for Faculty Excellence was leading a lot of kind of generative AI, how it works, how to try to AI proof your assignments. Lots of support for faculty, but not as much at that time for undergraduate students. So we identified that as an audience or a gap on our campus. And we started really small, as I mentioned. We did have support from library administration who really saw the need for more AI literacy, wanted the library to be very involved in those efforts on campus, and was willing to kind of let us try stuff and experiment and see what happened. So in 2024, we were starting to meet this Coalition of the Willing to talk through what would be realistic, what we could quickly launch. Virtual was an easy way to do that. And then leaning on the expertise and the interest that we already had. That key decision of having it be a group effort and then each volunteering to lead workshops on topics where we already had knowledge and interest turned out to be really critical because it took the pressure off me or my colleague or any one person to know everything and teach everything about AI. It really was a group effort. I also think it made the workshops more engaging because people were teaching about stuff that they cared about and felt passionate about already. And I'll talk about our specific workshop topics in just a couple slides. But as an example, I volunteered to teach a workshop called Scroll Smarter that was teaching strategies for identifying AI created images and audio and video, and also identifying misinformation and AI scams, because I feel really passionate about educating people on that right now. So I was excited to teach that workshop, and I think it made it a lot more engaging. So who was our coalition? I want to give tons of kudos to my colleagues. And I'll read out their names just to give them all the credit that they deserve. But Lynn Eads is our multimodal instruction and technologies librarian. Michelle Hazlett and Lauren Bruckner are data services librarians. Jamie Conklin is our nursing school liaison, and she is at the Health Sciences Library on campus. And then we also had leadership support from our Digital Research Services and Data Services Department. Again, the Health Sciences Library has been super involved in library IT. So kind of spreading it across the libraries, wide-ranging interests, wide-ranging kind of departments that we liaison with, and lots of different types of expertise. So hopefully that's helpful to see the roles of the library staff that we pulled into this planning group. All right, so here's what we actually did. We were like dabbling in existing workshop series, like folding in a little bit of AI here and there. But in fall 2024 is when we really launched the series. And we started, as I said, very small. We probably could have done like 2 workshops, and that would have been great. We went for 4 because we had several people co-teaching, and it felt sustainable at that point. So we did 4. Our total attendance across those 4 workshops was 238 people. So averaging 59 to 60 people per workshop, which is way more than any topic we have ever taught on, I think. We might have reached that cap a few times, but not in any kind of reliable way. So obviously there was a real appetite for workshops on this topic at our campus. So we did just the 4 topics initially were what is generative AI or AI 101, how it works, using generative AI in research, writing effective generative AI prompts, and copyright and ethical uses of Gen AI. So those were what we thought people might want to hear from initially. Here is how it's going now. the most recent semester, I won't read all of the workshops out to you, but this is what we've got going on. Um, it's a lot, but it has really expanded, and I'll talk more. I have that little asterisk there about how we got to this point. We are still seeing between 60 to 100 people attending each Zoom workshop. We have started offering some in person, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But if you're curious, those are the current topics that we're offering. I'll talk more about kind of feedback from attendees and how that has shaped the programming as well. So yeah, that's an interesting Liesl in the chat. Undergrad students barely attended, were scared to attend, thinking it was teaching them how to cheat. That's a really interesting, yeah, I hadn't really considered that. I think there was something for students about the library felt official, or like we were giving permission to learn about these topics. And so that's super interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I did mention that little asterisk because I do want to acknowledge we have a big library staff here at Carolina. We do already have a data science, data services department, health science library, and we also have a communication and marketing department that helped us promote these workshops. So it was, again, a big group effort. I feel like these workshops and the success really highlighted the need on our campus for more AI literacy funding and similar programming. It's really a training need right now. And so that did contribute to the library adding a position in fall 2025. We have a generative AI programming coordinator now who's amazing. She's awesome. And she helps coordinate all of these workshops. And so we again started small, spread the work around, and we have now been able to add another full-time person who is able to help us organize these workshops. So some of the things we learned and what I think could translate well to other institutions or campuses. The group effort, I keep coming back to that, but it was really essential. None of us had to be the one AI expert. We all had different areas of expertise, and we were collectively building this. And that distribution of labor is really what made it sustainable. I initially tried to schedule all of the workshops, create all the Zoom links, do all of the logistics. And honestly, I let some things fall through the cracks. And so I was gotta delegate. And so we were able, I'll talk more about that in a second, but no one person needed to run the whole workshop. If it does feel like you're the only person at your library or within your institution, kind of wanting to build AI literacy programming, I would definitely encourage you to look at other maybe libraries in your area, see if they have materials that you could borrow and build upon, so that you don't feel like you're building it alone from scratch. And you might also reach out. We've had a lot of help from our Center for Faculty Excellence. So your Center for Teaching and Learning, if you have that on your campus, may be a good partner for this effort as well. So second, we found that users are genuinely eager to talk about this and have a space to kind of freely talk about it and, maybe avoid some of that stigma. So providing that structured, facilitated space for that conversation was really valuable. And we think people found that as valuable as the actual content and the skill building that the workshops offered. Again, it's some soft skills, kind of redirecting if needed, validating people's feelings, keeping the conversation moving. But those are things we already know how to do as instruction librarians. And so it's just a new venue for those same skills. And then we also, with our library leadership, developed what we called a shared library AI philosophy. And that was a really good, helpful starting point for each workshop. We show it at the beginning of all of our workshops related to AI. And it's a good way to articulate our values, our approach, kind of set the framework for how we as a library approach AI. And here is the philosophy itself. I'm happy to read that out. The University Library is committed to ensuring that all Tar Heels have access to AI tools and the knowledge to use them thoughtfully. We're not here to tell you to use AI. We're here to help you understand it. Access, ethics, and privacy are foundational to all of our programming, so you can make informed decisions in a world shaped by AI. And I appreciate having this philosophy to share because I agree with it. And I also think it helps avoid that feeling of I'm an AI cheerleader and you should use these tools created by for-profit tech companies. I don't think that. I think that it's important to understand how they work, whether you choose to use them or not, totally valid either way. I just want students to really understand how this technology works. That it's not like all-knowing or a super Google, it's a prediction tool. So that's my passion about helping people understand how generative AI works. Uh, so that's really helpful. Definitely recommend that as a shared group activity. We also found in-person workshops were great for the discussion-based topics. Like in the fall, we had one that I co-led called Generative AI for Skeptics, and that was great. It was small group discussion where people got to kind of grapple with and share resources about ethical concerns that they had related to AI. But we had 13 people come to that versus the Zoom sessions where we have 60, 80, 120 people come. So the more general AI topics and the tools-based ones are better attended virtually. We decided to continue offering them that way. Undergrad students and staff were our most consistent attendee groups. And this series actually was really helpful in that it identified a group that was kind of being left out, which was staff. That surprised us a little bit, but I think it is a real gap on campus. Staff AI literacy was really being overlooked. Our institution was really focused on student resources, faculty resources, but we have actually more staff on our campus than we do faculty numbers wise. And they're using AI tools in their work already, a lot of them. And so they were equally eager for training, for more concrete policy as well, and that they were kind of feeling underserved in this area. So we have really continued to advertise to staff, welcome staff to our trainings, and get feedback from them on what they'd like to see. In the summer, so last summer and then this upcoming summer, we do a series that is staff focused, and everyone in the campus community is welcome to come. But we feel like staff, and I've heard that staff have more capacity to attend trainings in the summer, and so we're really gearing them towards kind of productivity, how AI can help you at work, at home, all of that potential. So if you are looking out for an audience in your campus or in your community, staff might be one that is receptive to your efforts. And then the last thing, oh, sorry, not the last thing, second to last thing, is that I feel like the library was really positioned as an expert in AI literacy in a way that we maybe hadn't been initially. These workshops were really successful and popular and kind of got people talking. Oh, the library's doing stuff around AI. I think that helped us get involved from the beginning in campus AI efforts, AI literacy efforts, have that seat at the table, so that we can be involved in those decisions that are going to impact not just the library and our users, but all of campus. So we did a post survey after the workshops. I think I mentioned that briefly. And the question that was most helpful is what other AI topics you wanted to see in the future. So that really shaped programming based on that feedback. Lots of requests for AI coding workshops. So we were able to identify some experts in our library on that. Like AI, again, for productivity and using it within like the Microsoft Office suite, for example. So that helped us shape our future offerings. And then this is the last thing I'm going to talk about for the workshops. It's a lot of logistics. And I mentioned that our programming coordinator, it's been amazing to have her be able to take all that work on, but that was a whole nother job that was added. So until we had her this past fall, we had to be really clear about who was doing what. So some of the things that we had to kind of assign roles, managing registration and posting those links, adding the workshops. We have lots of like newsletters, event calendars. So getting people aware of these workshops was a big job. Setting up the Zoom sessions. Somebody needed to moderate the chat while the instructor was teaching for questions, sending and then analyzing that post-survey data, and then organizing, bringing the group together to plan each semester. We always had a moment where it's like, we're done. And like, oh yeah, we need to start thinking about next semester. So it is a lot. And just to be really clear about that, this is probably obvious to anyone who's ever run a workshop or a workshop series, but beyond planning the curriculum and delivering the content, there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay, so that was a lot. I'm going to pause here You're welcome to unmute yourself. You're welcome to drop questions in the chat. I'm going to take a little sip of coffee and see what questions we have.
Please feel free to share folks or questions in the chat. You can also private message me questions if you prefer that way. Kimberly asking, can we watch some of your recorded sessions? I'd love to.
Yeah, so I will share those with you, Devin, so that when the post email goes out, that it will have links to some of the recordings. Yeah, we're happy to share them, and we welcome people from outside UNC to attend. You don't have to be a UNC affiliate to attend our workshops. Ooh, yay, lots of good questions coming in. So tell us more about the two positions you added and their role at AI. So Allison, thanks for that question. So we added one full-time person in the libraries who is kind of like a program manager or coordinator. So she triages. We now, in addition to the workshops, we get a lot of course-based instruction requests. So like, can you come talk to my class about AI and bias or AI and coding or just different topics? So she triages all of those, kind of matches a library instructor who's available. We are also getting a lot of staff, again, pointing to the staff need for training. Like, can you come talk to our department about using AI tools for productivity or our work with students or whatever questions they have? So she triages those as well. Thank you, Steve, for coming. And so that was the one position that we were able to add. It's kind of a program manager, program coordinator. Because as I said, I was letting stuff fall through the cracks because I have a whole nother, this was like my side hustle. We all have another full-time gig. And so if we wanted to sustain that programming, our library leadership acknowledged and was able to provide the resources to hire that other person, which I know is not feasible everywhere, but we were lucky to do that at that time. So thanks for that question. Jane asks, may have missed it, but does your campus recommend a particular AI tool? That's a really good question. We're also a Microsoft campus, Jane, and so we have Copilot with data protection for chat, and that's what we recommend to our students. I will say, especially with undergrads, I give my like this is, here's why you would use the data protection Copilot tool. It's not going to be reused to train this AI tool in the future. It's all within UNC's tenant. But I don't know that that message resonates, frankly, with students when they have like Claude or ChatGPT on their phone, and it's very easy to use that. So we do recommend that in our workshops. We've also launched this semester a platform that is based on LibreChat, which is from Harvard's library. But it allows students to try out different models, different large language models. And that one is also on our tenant, on UNC's tenant. And so it doesn't train the tools the way that like a free tool like ChatGPT does. So yeah, so that's a great question. The Gen AI for research workshop was about library research or lab research. That's a great question, Martha. It was kind of both. It was specifically aimed at health science students who are doing systematic reviews. And our health sciences library group did a really good analysis of which tools, so things like Research Rabbit, Cite, Elicit, I can't remember, they did like 5 or 6, really dug deeply into those tools, figured out which ones they recommended to be helpful for research and kind of how to use them to do a literature review or a systematic review. So it was more like library, secondary research rather than in a lab. Good question. Okay, James asks, how did you decide what topics to cover in your workshops? Yeah, so we kind of just, like you said, took a stab at the topics initially. It's like, here's what we are getting questions about. Here's what we think people want to know. And then that post-survey feedback form asked the question, what topics do you want to see? And that was really helpful in identifying. People were asking about ethics issues and using AI for coding specifically. And so we were able to put some programming together for that. That's a great question. All right, Liesel asks, is the library intending on spearheading staff AI training? It's a gap you see at your institution as well. Yes, so that's a concern that I have is scope creep and is so I mentioned we have the faculty training on campus, but we actually don't have like a center for staff development, for example. We have HR trainings, but those are kind of their own thing. And so the libraries, we're not intending to take on that role because I don't think we could meet capacity. We actually, our leadership just met with our campus HR this week to talk about this issue because we're getting so many requests from staff that we worry we won't be able to meet all of those requests. But it's kind of helped to point out to HR, this is a big gap on our campus. Here's what we can do and here's what we can't do. That's a really good question. Yeah, so the similar staff are invited to attend all of ours, but they kind of feel like they're being left behind. Yeah, so and then Lisa also mentioned looking at Boodlebox. Yeah, so I've seen some colleagues at other institutions use that as well. All right, awesome. Thank you all so much for the questions. I think I was able to address all of them, but please let me know, and then we'll stop at the end for questions as well. Just taking a look at the time. All right. So I do want to jump in since I've been talking a whole lot and let you all share. Where right now do you feel well equipped to address AI literacy, and then where do you feel like you're playing catch up? So in the Mentimeter, you're welcome to answer either or both of those questions, whichever one resonates with you. Do you feel like you already have that skill? You know, it's hard to find time to build your skills, kind of where you're feeling right now in terms of I feel prepared, or here's where I definitely don't feel prepared and want to catch up. Yeah, and while y'all are answering that one, Sarah made a really good point in the chat that their campus uses Gemini. Very clear in the library that you can't upload scholarly articles into the non-institutional instance of Gemini. So for example, if I downloaded a scholarly article and put it in my own personal Gemini account and was chatting with that PDF, that's a violation of copyright law, right? But they're probably doing this without us knowing, and we can't control once people download that PDF what they necessarily do with it. We can give them the regulations around it and what we advise them to do and not do, but we can't control them. Oh, sorry. I'll fix that. Okay. Thanks for pointing out the QR code. I think if you click next question in Mentimeter, it will allow you to answer that third question. But I'll drop the link in just a second. Sorry, but to Sarah's point, how might you go about teaching students the ethics of doing this? How might we get faculty to see what the library can offer in terms of evolving info-lit instruction? Yeah, that's a really great point and one that I personally wrestle with because I've had students tell me often, like, I upload all my professor's materials into Notebook LM or ChatGPT, and I have it make flashcards and study guides, and I add in, right, it's a license agreement violation. Yeah, Mary, that's a really good point. And so, you know, I do tell them, like, well, did you get your professor's permission? If you've downloaded these things from the library's databases, you cannot upload them into, you know, these tools. And so, yes, so it's a very tricky conversation. I don't really have a good answer, but I'm glad that you asked it. And I would love for others in the chat, like Mary chimed in, it's also a license agreement. And so yeah, other responses would be great. I'm gonna check on the Mentimeter. Hopefully folks are able to. I see some responses coming in. I'm gonna drop the direct link into the chat and see that might be hopefully we'll take you to the right place versus the QR code. I'm sorry about that. So that's a direct link to the Mentimeter, but if you're not able to get to it on the screen, it should allow you to advance to the next question after you put in a response. So to take a look at how we're feeling, comfortable with library research specific tools, it changes so quickly and so busy with other things. That really resonates with me. Yeah. I really want more training and preparation for how to help people use AI tools ethically. And I didn't even talk about that piece of it, is that we spent the end of 2023 and the first part of 2024 doing a lot. Our Coalition of the Willing was doing a lot of trainings for library staff so that we felt prepared to answer those kind of questions. So that was like step one before we could even offer workshops. Demo Copilot, help with citation. Yeah, again, things change so quickly, it's hard to keep up. Not so much with all the AI productivity and art tools, etc. Yeah, needing to catch up with deep fakes and hallucinations. That is so difficult. I spend a lot of time on it, and it's still a struggle for me. Comfortable with revising text and drafts, creating images for outreach. I feel like I can caution about assessing citations, cited and AI responses, but a lot to learn more about the various tools. Playing catch up is meeting the demand for training, definitely. Playing catch up, getting fellow librarians to embrace the mission of AI literacy, even if they don't personally support generative AI. That definitely resonates with me. Couldn't train someone in or recommend things like Gemini, Claude, Copilot, Notebook LM. Yeah, very well equipped because I've been asked to learn about it, but also using it to help my kiddos learn too. So I was in a panel yesterday, and one of the panelists mentioned that she uses a large language model to help her 12-year-old do math homework. So she was asking the large language model, like, how would you explain this math problem to a 12-year-old? And that was really helpful in coaching her through that. Comfortable with the overall landscape, but I need to catch up on tool development beyond campus tools, right? Since students don't often use the official tools. That's the same experience that I've had where I can give them the data privacy talk and why you would use this, but it's just so, I mean, it's so easy, like it's right there on your phone. So I have also had that. And then catching up emerging tools for librarians, reconciling my own aversion to AI with providing instruction and resources for those who want to use it. Yeah, and it's very valid that to kind of grapple with the larger impact of these tools and the ethical considerations, and not just kind of like acknowledging them, sweeping them away, and then using the tools anyway. Awesome. Thank you all very much for bearing with like the technology snafu there and responding. So I have talked a lot about challenges, but I also do, keeping an eye on the time, want to talk about how I think as librarians, we're actually situated really well to meet this particular moment in AI literacy. So I've talked a lot about our role on campus among students, faculty. We really are uniquely positioned as kind of a bridge between students, faculty, staff. We are seen as trusted partners and typically pretty neutral, or as neutral as kind of a campus job can be, I think. We are not the ones writing the assignments or assessments. We're not grading students typically unless we do course instruction. That, in my opinion, gives us a kind of accessibility that course instructors sometimes don't have. And it's not because they're not approachable or willing to have these conversations, but the power dynamic is just different. And I've had students tell me things, and I'm sure you all have experienced this as library staff. They'll tell me things that they would not tell their professor. Maybe they should be going to office hours and talking directly to their instructor, and I kind of coach them through that. But the power dynamic is, it feels a little bit more even or less intimidating, I think. So I think we're positioned to advise students in a way that course instructors maybe aren't always. We have a long tradition in libraries of providing equitable access to information tools. Not everyone has access to that. We've talked about the cost of these tools, and who can pay $20 out of pocket a month for ChatGPT and who cannot, or experience using the tools, understanding how they work. And so libraries are, in the way that in other technologies we've helped to bridge that digital divide, we can do that in this arena as well. We already teach information literacy, critical thinking, source evaluation. We're already equipped to teach those skills and help users think critically about AI-generated information. These are skills that we've built. We're excellent at teaching these. And so this is, again, just a new arena where we can help our users identify what is credible and true as they're evaluating AI output. We also again, work across disciplines, across departments, campus units, students, faculty, staff. We work with everybody as the library. One of our library leaders on my campus calls us the big umbrella. It always makes me think of like a circus tent, and it does feel like a circus sometimes, but like everyone is welcome under that big library umbrella. And I like that analogy. I think we can help bridge campus groups that might be kind of more siloed and each working on their own AI efforts and say like, oh, a faculty member in this department is already using an AI chatbot with their course. Let me connect you up with them and you can work together. Just, the same work and connection that we already do, just around this new AI arena. Okay, so a few concrete takeaways that I hope will be useful. So first, you're not in this alone. It's a shared responsibility to teach AI literacy, or it should be across campus stakeholders. It should not be the job of just one particular person. You don't need to have all the answers about AI, although I know sometimes it feels that way for me. But you shouldn't be expected to be the one with the answer. Look around your campus for allies, for collaborators. If there are working groups or committees, that's a good way to get involved that are already addressing AI literacy. But any opportunity to collaborate is really, really helpful. Cannot stress enough, start very small. One workshop, two workshops would be a great starting point. Things that already align with your interests and expertise. Again, maybe identify an audience that is already coming to your workshops or that you think maybe would be really receptive to this topic would be a good way to move forward. And then if you're able to, if you're in the position to get the library involved in AI literacy conversations. I mentioned that the workshop series was really successful and kind of got us more seats at the table on our campus where these conversations were happening. I really do think that libraries have an important voice in how AI is going to be implemented over the coming years, what it means for research, teaching and learning, information access, critical thinking, and equity. So I don't want those conversations to happen without libraries at the table. So it was a lot. I think we have 3 minutes left. And so I would love any more questions, your own experiences, lots of things coming in. Liesl, yeah. So, oh yeah, instructional designers are a great collaborative partner. That's awesome. That's a really good suggestion. Jenny asks, hi Jenny, what are your thoughts on showing students how to use generative AI tools to find sources? Like give me 4 peer-reviewed sources. A lot of guidance shows students how to brainstorm topics, keywords, but I don't think this is how students are using it. So that's a really good point. I do show them how, like, here's how you can brainstorm keywords, tell it, put it in a table with Boolean operators, organized by concept. I'm not sure how many students are going and doing that later. What I really stress, and I show examples of hallucinated sources where the journal title is wrong. It's a book, but it's, telling me it's a journal article. So I take screenshots and I have like a whole set of them of hallucinated examples. And I also share cautionary tales that instructors have shared with me where students submitted a paper with like a Thomas Hardy quote that did not exist. He never wrote that. Came straight from an LLM. So kind of those examples of where I've seen that go awry, hoping that that pumps the brakes a little bit if they're tempted to use it in that way. Yeah, a research assistant in Primo. Yeah, it's been our most effective and reliable tool. That's good to hear. Yeah, I've tried to boost. That's one area I want to put more time into is using those research assistants and built-in database AI features. All right. I'll leave it open for our last maybe 30 seconds if there are any other questions that come through. But please do keep in touch. My email address is here. I also spell my name a little bit differently with that Y. So if you Google UNC DAYNA, you will find me. I'm very easy to find. Yeah, so the great question, the library AI studio shown in this is both a physical space and a service point that kind of grew out of our efforts to provide AI literacy support. So that's what I meant by like these workshops were the starting point and it's gotten a lot bigger. So maybe Devin at some point I could do like a follow-up with our other staff who It is real. It's a real verified photo. That's a great question. None of my
That would be
content
great.
was
Yeah.
AI generated. Yeah. Thank you all so much. All right.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to do a follow up. I definitely feel like we're in that state of like, is this an AI generated image or is it an actual thing that the library is doing?
Yes, exactly. I know. Um, and I've had students tell me like, I just don't believe anything now, which I also don't think is the right approach, but it's part
Yeah.
of
There's a happy medium to be struck. Well,
Yes.
thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Dana. This was fantastic. I felt like you brought in some good examples of how that soft skills practice comes into play in the instruction setting. Folks, keep an eye out for an email from me tomorrow with the feedback survey, a PDF of the slides, and the recording. And keep an eye out also for more instruction related to AI through the NC Live training program. We'll have webinars throughout the year, and we have an AI community of practice that you're welcome to join. And with that, I'll have everybody, we'll wrap up, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you all.
Take care.